Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive, where we kind of jump headfirst into some fascinating topics.
Always a good time.
Today, we're diving into the world of Zaheer's mantra
From Avatar.
from Avatar, yeah, the Legend of Korra,
Right.
this airbending prodigy.
Yeah.
With his radical ideals, kind of challenges us to think about freedom and detachment and, what is enlightenment really? So we'll be dissecting some excerpts from an analysis of his philosophy and spiritual journey. And I guess the big question is, does Zaheer's mantra represent true liberation, or is it a dangerous form of escapism?
Well, I think it's a question that really resonates with anybody who's, ever felt that tension between the constraints of society and their own yearning for personal freedom.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and, just hearing those words, let go your earthly tether, enter the void, empty and become wind. Like, there's something so poetic and beautiful about it, but also, maybe a little dangerous.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating is how his ideas connect to some actual spiritual traditions. I mean, if you look at Buddhism and Taoism, both of those emphasize detachment from worldly desires, to achieve that higher state of being.
So, I mean, it sounds like the void he's talking about isn't just like an empty space. It's like a state of liberation, right? Like from everything that weighs us down.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Think of it as like shedding those consplets, like material possessions, societal expectations, maybe even emotional attachments. And for Zahir, I think that's really the key. Like that complete detachment unlocks true freedom and, allows him to do those extraordinary things like fly.
But you got to think, like, that level of detachment, it comes with a pretty hefty price tag, doesn't it? I mean, he cuts ties with everyone, even Bertilli, like his beloved. It makes you wonder, like, is that really enlightenment? Or is it just a way to escape the messiness of, I don't know, like human connection?
Yeah, and I think that's the paradox, at the heart of his philosophy. He wants to, be liberated through detachment, but in the process, he kind of risks losing the very things that make us human, like our compassion, empathy, even love.
So it's like that void that he's so eager to embrace. It's alluring, but it's also dangerous, kind of like a double-edged sword.
Yeah, precisely. It offers this promise of freedom and unfettered movement, but it also threatens to consume his sense of self and his morality.
It's like it makes me think of a kite without a string. It's soaring through the sky, but is it really free, or is it just drifting aimlessly at the mercy of the wind?
That's a really powerful analogy. I like that. And it really does highlight that tension, his pursuit of this absolute freedom.
Yeah.
But it leads him down this path of anarchy and violence, trying to dismantle all societal structures.
So it's almost like he goes from seeking personal liberation to wanting to impose a type of liberation on everyone else, even if it means, resorting to destruction.
Exactly. And that's where we see that stark contrast between Zahir's path and the journey of Korra, our beloved avatar.
Right. Because she also wrestles with those questions of identity and purpose and freedom.
Yeah.
But she's got a totally different approach.
Right. Absolutely. Zahir's trying to sever all ties while Korra finds strength in her connections, to her friends, to her past lives, and to her role as that bridge between the human and spirit worlds.
So it's like he sees these earthly tethers as chains holding him back, and she sees them as these, these grounding forces that give her strength and direction.
That's brilliant. I love that. They're contrasting philosophies. It's just two very different ways of navigating those complexities of freedom and responsibility.
And we can't talk about Zaheer without talking about maybe the most visually striking manifestation of his philosophy, his ability to fly. It's more than just a cool superpower.
Yeah.
And what does it symbolize, like in the context of his journey?
Yeah, you're right. It's more than just a power. It's a symbol of his complete surrender to the void, his mastery of airbending, of his own spirit. But it also represents that immense sacrifice that it takes to achieve that liberation. He gives up everything he holds dear to attain that seemingly unfettered freedom.
It's kind of awe-inspiring, but also a little terrifying when you think about it.
Yeah.
This image of him, just soaring through the sky, unburdened, no earthly tethers.
Yeah, I think it forces us to really confront some uncomfortable questions. Like, is that absolute freedom truly attainable? What are we willing to sacrifice for it? And what are the potential consequences of, such a radical pursuit?
So it feels like Zaheer's story is It's less about providing answers
Yeah.
and more about pushing us to ask those tough questions about freedom, about detachment, about what it actually means to be human.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really is. And, these excerpts we're looking at, they offer some really insightful perspectives.
Yeah, for sure. So let's dive into those a bit. What really stood out to you as like interesting or thought-provoking?
Well, one thing that kind of hit me was how much emphasis there is on the lasting impact of, his mantra on the world of Avatar and even like beyond. It sparked this whole debate about freedom versus responsibility.
Right, because it's not just like some abstract idea.
Yeah.
His philosophy, it's like he puts it into action and it has consequences for him and for the people around him.
Exactly. And that's one of the really good points the analysis makes. It's not just some fantastical element of a fictional world. It holds a mirror up to our own society. Like it
Mhm.
makes us think about the potential dangers of unchecked idealism.
So even though it's like airbenders and spirits, there's still something very human and universal about the choices we make.
Absolutely. And the analysis really stresses that, the importance of balance. Like we
Mhm.
have to consider the human cost of our actions. We have to recognize that, everything is connected. It's kind of like a cautionary tale,
Yeah.
about taking any ideology, even one based on freedom, to its extreme.
And it makes me think about what we were talking about before.
Hmm.
Zaheer's detachment versus Korra's, um, I guess, more grounded approach.
Yeah.
The analysis seems to suggest that that contrast is at the core of their conflict.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just like a fight between two benders, right? It's a clash of ideologies, two totally different ways of being in the world. Zahir, in his pursuit of detachment, he almost becomes inhuman. He loses that capacity for empathy, for connection.
Yeah.
And then you have Korra, with all her flaws, she's still grounded in her humanity.
And it's almost like this show visually represents those philosophies.
Yeah.
Like Zahir, weightless, flying, totally detached.
And Korra, rooted to the earth, dealing with the weight of her responsibilities, a very different kind of strength.
Right, right. It's a pretty powerful image. And it really speaks to that whole freedom versus responsibility debate.
Absolutely. I think the creators of the show did a masterful job weaving these philosophical themes into the story. Through the dialogue and the visuals, they really make you think, and question and feel.
Yeah. So Zahir's mantra, it's not just some cool sounding words. It's like a challenge,
Yeah.
to really examine what we believe about freedom and responsibility and what it even means to exist.
Well said. And before we wrap up, there's one more thing from the analysis I want to touch on. I found it really insightful.
Okay, yeah, let's hear it.
So it basically suggests that while his mantra is definitely alluring, it's ultimately a cautionary tale. His pursuit of freedom, while it might seem admirable, leads him down a path of, destruction and isolation.
Like a be careful what you wish for kind of thing.
Exactly. The analysis argues that true freedom might not be about cutting all ties. It might be more about finding balance,
Mhm.
choosing your tethers wisely, recognizing that even in our limitations, there can be strength and beauty and meaning.
That's deep. It's like Zahir's story is reminding us that even when we're striving for something good, like freedom, there can be consequences if we're not careful.
Precisely. It's a call for balance, for introspection,
Yeah.
for recognizing that interconnectedness of everything.
Yeah. And it reminds us that even in a fantastical world like that, with bending and spirits, the toughest battles are often the ones within ourselves.
Beautifully put. And that brings us to an important question for our listeners.
All right, yeah, let's bring it back to them. So what does all this mean for us here, in the real world?
Zahir's story, it invites us to take a look at our own earthly tethers. What are those things, those beliefs, those relationships that hold us back or lift us up?
It's about finding that balance, right, between freedom and responsibility, between letting go and staying connected.
Exactly. And it's not an easy thing to do. There's no like one size fits all answer.
So it's a journey, like figuring out what works for each of us.
Absolutely. Zahir's story, it's not about giving us a set of rules.
It's more about starting a conversation,
Right.
helping us question our assumptions and be open to different perspectives.
Exactly. Maybe even embracing the paradoxes, those gray areas where freedom and responsibility intersect.
Because maybe true freedom isn't about, what we cut loose. Maybe it's more about what we choose to hold on to. Like, what if our tethers aren't chains, but more like threads that weave us into this tapestry of life?
That's beautiful. Our connections, our responsibilities, even our passions, those are the things that I think give our lives meaning, you know?
And purpose.
Yeah, they ground us, but they also, lift us up at the same time. And maybe that's where we find the truest kind of freedom
Right.
in those connections. It seems like we've come full circle. Back to that core of Zaheer's mantra and what it all means.
We have. So to everyone listening, we really encourage you to think about these ideas. Like, what are your earthly tethers? Are they holding you back, or are they giving you strength? And what does true freedom look like to you?
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts and keep this conversation going.
Thanks for joining us on this, this exciting deep dive into Zahir's world. And until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep searching for that balance between freedom and connection. It's a tough one, but it's worth it.
Farewell, fellow truth seekers. May your journeys be filled with wonder and enlightenment.